Hello and welcome to our Credit Chat Live podcast. I'm Christina Roman, the Consumer Education and Advocacy Manager for Experian. Each week we host a credit chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and we dive into essential personal finance topics. Now, we're currently recording this podcast in November, but it likely will not air until after the new year. However, in anticipation of holiday spending trends and the debt that likely will accompany it, we are going to discuss some ways to tackle your holiday credit card debt. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Leslie Tayne. She is a longtime Credit Chat panelist. Leslie, I think you've been joining Credit Chats since before I even worked at Experian 8 years ago. Now, Leslie, yeah, a long time. Leslie is an award-winning financial attorney and founder and managing director of the Tayne Law Group, PC, based in New York. Additionally, she's a speaker and author on all things credit and debt, and I'm thrilled to have her here today to share some tips about how you can manage some of your holiday debt. Thank you so much for joining us, Leslie.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So when I was looking through some trends, some anticipated spending trends, I noticed that a lot of surveys said that consumers are planning to spend about $1,700 to $2,000 on their holiday expenses. And some were willing to take on debt just to do it. They don't mind spending that extra money to shower love on their loved ones this holiday season. So I kind of wanted to get some tips from you on how can consumers, once the holiday season has passed and they're starting to see their bills, how can they begin to create a plan to tackle that holiday debt?
Truthfully, that plan has to start pre-holiday. It should start now, before Thanksgiving, when you are taking a look at spending. Holiday spending starts so early every single year. So many families get together during Thanksgiving and during the period of time between Thanksgiving and the end of the year, family, friends, exchanging gifts. So that really has to start early. If you missed that boat and you weren't able to start early and you feel like you've overspent, then it's not like it's too late. It's always a good time to take a look at how you spent the money, where you spent the money, and ways in which to cut your budget in order to pay back what you spent during your holiday season.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what are some ways that they can kind of track their expenses of their anticipated spending, and then how can they set themselves up for success in the new year?
So there isn't a one-size-fits-all for tracking spending and budgeting. I am not a fan of saying you must do it one particular way. Everybody learns very differently. Everybody absorbs things differently. And some people can digest things in smaller doses than others. And so don't feel that because somebody else does it or it's suggested that that's the best way. So figure out what works for you. I still really love old school. I am a fan of taking a pencil and actually writing it out. Even though there's so many apps and so many electronic options for me, and even there's plenty of options that you can find not only on apps but online. There's so many different ways, but I'm still really a fan of old school writing it down. So if you prefer old school, then write it down on a piece of paper. And sometimes, like even for me, I like to write it down and then I can look and see in my head, I can visualize what's coming in, what's going out, and who I have to buy for. And then I can transfer that into some sort of an app or an electronic type of budgeting mechanism that works for me. So, and some people like things a little more simplistic and other people like it much more complex where they're running spreadsheets. And I see that in my practice all the time, especially when it comes to debt. I have people who are super unorganized and those who are really organized. And I wouldn't beat yourself up and say, you're terrible at this because you're not as organized or you don't get it the first time, but find different methods that work for you. So if it means writing it down, write it down. And if it means putting it into an app or electronically, or you need a buddy system, somebody to help you with that, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I personally am a pen and paper person myself, but I have friends that have shown me their Excel sheets, and it is a little bit overwhelming for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, you track everything right down to every grocery bill, every gas bill. I think that's fantastic. I wish I had that kind of discipline, but I do like to write all my bills down. I like to create my list and put an amount that I'd like to spend next to each person. I find that helps me also. If I have an amount that I don't want to go over, I try to keep it, per person under that budget. So I love those tips. And yes, absolutely, there's no one size fits all approach when it comes to budgeting. Everything, it can be very personalized, and there should be no guilt around how you manage your finances. It's just doing the best that you can to get back on track.
I completely agree with that. There is no guilt when it comes to any of this. And I do see a lot of that also. A lot of people feel really badly, and feeling badly is really a form of guilt about their spending or lack of tracking their appropriate spending and who they're giving what to. And there's a lot of pressure during the holidays to provide not only for your household and even friends, but even in business. And we were just talking about it in my office about, the spending limits on, let's say, Secret Santa participation, and whether there's an opt-out option for those who might not want to participate. So I really think that, unfortunately, the holiday season comes with so much stress, even though it's supposed to be a really happy time. But the budgeting part is the worst part of it, because it just doesn't come naturally to most people, and nobody wants to be looked at like, oh, are they being cheap, or are they, then there's a lot of, self-talk that makes it almost worse. So I would encourage people to really try to boost yourself up. I can do this. All positive statements. I can do this. I can work out a budget. I can stick to my budget. I understand my limits in spending, and that I am going to create boundaries when it comes to money and finances and spending this season. And if you can find a couple of mantras to kind of live by, and I'd recommend even writing them out and saying them before you go to a store or before you spend, when you're discussing these things, so that you find some positive energy around the holidays and spending and budgeting.
I love that you shared that. I'm all about the positive mantras. And then also, I love that you brought up holiday work parties too, because I think a lot of people, they may focus on, what am I going to buy for my family, my immediate family, my extended family? And then you think of those holiday events, but you don't take into account, wait, there's usually a holiday work party. Maybe you buy an outfit for that. Maybe you have to buy a Secret Santa gift, as you mentioned. Sometimes there's charitable giving activities also that your work may want you to participate in. So there's just a lot of those extra things that people don't think about. So I love that you mentioned planning for that and those mantras. I think that's really important, because it makes you feel better, and it makes you feel a little bit more in control about your financial picture when you can set those boundaries and have those positive affirmations for yourself.
I agree. I like putting a positive spin on everything. I mean, I realize that debt is very challenging for most people. And from my perspective, personally and professionally, I'm really a glass is half full kind of woman. And I look at the management of debt and the management of finances as something that's positive. And even though there's negative that comes with it, I always try to find the positive spin on it. You might be limited, but at least you were able to do something. And, it's an opportunity to show yourself some self-love during the holiday season too, which is really important.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned having a mantra in place before you head out to do your holiday shopping and setting those boundaries. A recent Experian survey found that 55% of consumers admit that sales and deals tempt them when they're out shopping. One for you, one for me, or, oh, I didn't realize that this was going to be on sale. This would be a great gift for so-and-so, and that wasn't something that you had on your list. So what strategies can consumers use to help to avoid the temptation of adding on to their spending when they're out shopping?
I think when you're shopping, try to keep in mind a written list. If you look back down at your list and distract yourself from what's happening around you, when you go into a store during the holiday season, it's so overwhelming, especially visually. It's overwhelming where to go first and what display is the most attractive. And then there's sales and there's opportunities to buy things you need and other people need. But if you look back down and you say, okay, here's my list, and on my list is this, go straight to that and then say, did I accomplish this? And go back to the list. So you're distracting yourself while you're in the store. And I think that's a good way to manage it. I think when you go into a store, I know for me, I get sucked in and I'm like, oh, well, but maybe I need this and maybe I need that and there's sales. But if I look back down and I distract that thought process, all of a sudden I've derailed the focus on what's there. And I say, you know what, it's time for me to leave. I bought what I needed need it, I'm leaving. But then you're stuck online sometimes, and then there's more things to buy while you're standing online. Again, I recommend trying to distract yourself with looking at something on your phone, or telling yourself that you did the best and you're excited about what you purchased, and that there are always going to be sales. There's always going to be more items. Post the holidays, there's even more sales. So there's opportunities even afterwards to buy for less. So if you walk in and you've accomplished your goals, then feel really good and say, you know what, I accomplished my goals here in the store. There's nothing else that I need. And take a inventory of what's in your basket at that time. Did I get everything I need? And is there anything in here that I really don't need?
Yeah, I love that. Going in with that sense of like tunnel vision of I'm going to get the items that are on this list. And gosh, those cash wrap, those lines as you're heading up to the register where they have all those little things, you know, the extra chargers, the face masks, you know, those little coffee cups that call to you, and you're like, oh, that's so cute. I have to like stare straight ahead, and or even to your point, look at my phone to make sure that I'm not just adding, because every little thing adds up. Every little thing is a charge, and it's an unanticipated charge. So great tips there.
It is hard to stay focused. There's no doubt. And even when you're shopping online, and traditionally we would suggest shop online. It's a lot easier. But these days, if you've shopped online, you see other things pop up and say, deal of the day. Would you like to add this to your cart? You know, if you go in with the just say no, or sometimes leave something in the cart and come back a day or two later and see if it's still something that you want. And that can be another way to help yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And then sometimes I notice that when I'm checking out at some stores, they'll say, oh, you bought this last time, or we saw that you were also looking at this, and they just try to get you right when you're about to check out. So that's a great tip about if you want to add it to your cart, but then not purchase it right then and there. You may find that if you walk away from it, you realize it's not really something in my budget right now, or I don't need it. So you may end up deleting it. I love that tip.
I like the I don't need it. I use that personally all the time. Do I need this? Mm-hmm. And as I say, why am I in this store? I don't belong there. So, you know, I know that if I go to a certain store, if I go to the mall, I know that I'm not going to be able to control myself. And so I just say, I don't belong here, and this is not why I came here. And, you know, sometimes I'll even delegate, you know, and ask other people who are going to particular stores to pick something up for me, because again, there's less temptation if somebody else is able to do you a favor or is going to be there anyway, and you can pick it up.
Yes, that's a great tip as well. Enlist somebody else to get out there so that you're not tempted. Now, what tips would you give consumers who may be planning on using their credit cards for the bulk of their holiday shopping?
So I am not an anti-credit card person at all, even though I work in an industry where we resolve credit card debt. But I think credit cards really can work to your advantage if you use them strategically. So when you're thinking about purchasing, many credit card companies have partnerships with organizations and companies that you buy things from. So my suggestion is go on to the portal and take a look at who their partners are. And then are any of those partners organizations or companies that you're going to buy something from? If so, you can connect with that partnership and connect it to your card, and you might see additional discounts. That's one way. Which card would rack up the most points is another way. Again, there's no right way here, but it is a strategic use of a financial tool. So your financial tool is your credit card. And how does it benefit you? It benefits you by giving you certain advantages in purchasing, discounts, points, money back, travel points. And again, that relates to a host of different priorities in everybody. This year, maybe you're not doing any traveling and cash back makes more sense. This year, you might be doing more traveling and you want to put it on a card where you're going to get more travel points or points towards stays and other things that you might be doing in the near future. So looking at what it is that you're going to do in the near future that helps you with the points. Also, at the end of the year, if you look at certain cards, there are ways to pre-purchase points that can get you additional discounts. So it's important to understand your card, and that requires you to have a relationship with the portal and the app. Spend some time perusing through that app and just look at the different and the various options that they have related to the card and see what works for you.
Absolutely. In the many years that you've been a part of Credit Chat, I'm sure you've heard Rod say, credit card is a financial tool, a debt is a financial problem. You reiterated that. So, and what I really like about your tip is it really makes you more intentional about how you use your credit cards, because you're reaping a reward by using the credit card. You're either incurring savings or maybe rewards, depending on what your plans are for the future, that could then come back to help you. And I love that approach to using credit cards. One thing I want to make sure that consumers understand is, if you're planning to use your credit cards, it's important to have a plan afterwards for how you're going to pay it down. If you make large purchases or you run up your bill, you're likely going to see a decrease in your credit score because you're carrying a lot of debt on those credit cards. But if you're just planning on paying it off right away, you have a plan for how you're going to tackle that debt, that's not something that you have to worry about. So just some things to think about. But I really enjoy that you talk about being really intentional with how you use your credit cards.
I think you bring up a really good point about paying it off, because there's a lot of benefits to the credit cards, but most of those benefits are lost if you don't pay them off and you're paying double-digit interest rates. You'll find that your purchases cost much more than you save, and any of the benefits that you redeem from using the card are generally washed out by carrying a balance. So if you're not sure you're going to be able to pay it off, you might want to consider using a card with the lowest interest rate and the best terms versus using the one with the most points and the most benefits. Because again, if you're weighing what those benefits are, there's a cost to them if you don't pay them off, if you don't pay the card off at the end of the month when you get your bill. So it is something to look at. It's definitely not like a black and white, which is giving me the best benefit. It's which is going to give me the best benefit that fits in my budget, where I'm not going to spend more by carrying a balance.
Absolutely. Again, that just goes back to that intentionality about how you use your credit cards. That's a great tip. And also, what I really like about your tips is it makes people focus on looking at things like your interest rate, looking at the benefits of your cards, because when you start to become familiar with how your credit cards can benefit you, then you can start to make a plan for how to use them to your advantage. So I really appreciate that advice, and really having consumers start to look at that. Pay attention to your bill. When you get that statement, don't just go and shred it because you think you know how much you're going to be able to pay this month or how much you owe. Really take a look at those types of things. How much interest does this card cost you if you keep a balance on it? What are the terms and conditions? What is the balance? Really take a hard look at that and familiarize yourself with it. That's all part of taking control of your financial health.
I would recommend also that you take a look at the bill when it comes, and then take a look at the bill when you intend to pay it. So that's 2 different times of the month. So things could change. You can have one intention, and then that could change at the end of the month when you go to pay it. I do recommend strongly that you set up minimum payments so that you never miss the payment, because life happens and that could happen, but that you understand what the dashboard really looks like, and you understand, like you said, the terms and conditions, but also, how does this work for me? Does it work for me? Are there hidden benefits that I'm not even aware of?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong also with picking the phone up and having a conversation with somebody at the bank about the benefits and services that are on those cards. And traditionally, you want to be aware that it's nice to have cards for a really long time, but you want to be able to know that what's making the most difference in your life financially. And during the month, things do change. So I'm a fan of checking in regularly with your credit card statement and your dashboard, just to be aware of, what did I spend? When does the billing close? That's an important date too to know. When is my bill payment due? When would it start accruing interest? Can I prepay it at any time? Maybe you spread out the payment so that it's not so difficult to pay. If you have difficulty making a payment, have a conversation with the bank.
Yes, absolutely. Yes to all of that. Really familiarize yourself. All great tips. Now, let's say, okay, somebody's listening to this, it's the start of the year. They're dreading opening that credit card bill because maybe they spent a little too much. They're feeling really overwhelmed by debt. What advice do you have for this person?
So the worst thing I think you could do for yourself is not open the bill. I understand the challenge of opening a lot of bills. It's unlikely that that's your only bill post holiday season. It's likely that there's more than one credit card bill. It's likely there's other bills or debts that have been piling up, and it's a new year, and there be maybe new things that have popped up that you didn't expect. So it's important that you not ignore bills that come because of fear, and take a look at what you're feeling. I like to connect that a lot because I think that in order to change your path that you're on, whether it's financially or otherwise, you have to connect to the feelings that it's invoking in you. You know, there's fear and trepidation and guilt and and sometimes anger and frustration when looking at your bills because of, the balances and the interest rates you're paying, and sometimes the lack of funds to meet those obligations. So, if you come into contact with your feelings and you say, I'm feeling really frustrated with this bill, or I'm feeling angry that I have this bill and not enough money, you can sit with the feelings a little bit and try to work through them and find ways to manage it. Because I think what happens is when I see clients and people over the years dealing with the finances from an emotional perspective, it makes it very difficult to make good financial decisions. So if you can be in touch with the feelings that you're having, and then you peel that back and understand where that comes from, then you can roll it into something else that becomes more positive. I understand that I'm feeling angry right now. I'm going to sit with that and accept it and say, it's okay that I'm feeling angry, and not make myself feel worse. And then say, all right, what can I do? How do I empower myself now that I understand what would make me feel better under the circumstances? And sometimes it's just baby steps. Making the minimum payment may just be a baby step. Maybe just even making the payment is a baby step. And that's something to be proud of. I made the payment. I made the payment on time. Next month, I'm going to do better and cut back on my expenses. So, it's not a one-time issue with the credit card statement, and you might not be able to pay it off, and that's okay. But figure out a way that you can and meet your obligations all around.
Yes. Sitting with those kinds of emotions can be really hard too, but I think that's what makes you a little bit more resilient when it comes to your spending and managing your financial health. It's important to take that step. So I think that's a really fantastic tip, to just sit with it and acknowledge it, and then make that plan to move forward. So I'm going to get into the last question that I want to ask. How can consumers balance the holiday season with staying financially disciplined, especially when faced with societal pressures to spend?
Well, keep in mind that the societal pressures to spend is as wide as you want it to be. So you can, like anything else, delete information from your phone and inboxes that come to you. You have control. So you can filter everything that comes to you so that it's not something that overwhelms you. For example, you can stay off of Instagram and other social media and TikTok during the holiday season and disconnect from it for 30 days while you focus on what it is that you want to focus on during that month. They talk about dry Januaries and stuff. You can do, certainly do a social media and you can program to listen to other empowering type of programs that empower you mentally, physically, and financially, so that your feed now, the algorithms are now changing in your feeds so that you are getting more information that helps you rather than bombards you with negativity. I mean, that's the case really with anything. And we see that, kind of across the board, financially and otherwise. The more you're going to search for something, the more it's going to come up. The more you talk about it, the more your social media feeds and the other algorithms are going to pick that up, and it's going to be in your inboxes and in your feed. So hit delete. There's no reason you have complete control over everything that comes to you. You can exit out and you can focus on finding the positives and other things that make you happy, during that time. What's something more benign than either listening to the news or challenges in programs that come to you that want to help you spend. And that's what's happening this time of the season. So I encourage you to be in control and create those boundaries and X out what you don't want and delete apps that aren't making sense and not log on to places that will tempt you further. And certainly a lot of the social media, especially this time of year, is going to do that. And it's going to make it very hard to control if you don't cut it out. Honestly, for any human being, when that stuff is bombarded at you, it's all stuff you like, it's triggering, and it's triggering you to buy. And there's a lot of subconscious parts of the puzzle there, but you have control. You have complete control over your own data and cell phone and your feeds.
Absolutely. Leslie, tell me why I was looking at a steam mop today that I didn't know that I needed. And I was like, absolutely not, Christina. We do not need a steam mop right now. Calm down. This is all stuff that gets fed to me because I love to watch cleaning videos and I love, so I definitely need to change my algorithm a little bit. And I'm taking those steps also to read a book that is empowering, to read a financial book too. I think a great gift during the holiday season is financial books. That way we can empower our loved ones with that type of advice too. Because we don't realize it, but we're not alone in trying to navigate our debt and our financial health. We have family members that are going through it. They just hide it a little bit better. So that could be a great option as well.
The financial and battling debt is a lifelong challenge for almost everybody. It's a lot of people like to tell me they have no debt, and I get that. I get that, there are people that don't really struggle so much with their debt, but debt is part of your life, whether you pay it or not. So it is a constant thought process. There's no way you can adult and go through your entire adult life without a conversation about debt, without dealing with debt, without dealing with payments, obligations financially and otherwise. The sooner you accept that and say, this is part of life and this is where, my adult life is, the better off you'll be. And the more that you talk to yourself and say, I don't need something. Why am I here in this store? Like I say to myself, why am I here? I don't need this and I don't need that. And I don't want to clutter. And it's just one of those things that, you have to talk to yourself constantly when it comes to spending, purchasing, and dealing with finances and trying to have a really positive perspective on it. I have a very positive perspective on paying bills. I get excited about it. I love paying the bills off, and I'm appreciative that I had the opportunity to have what I have so that I can pay that off. And so I look at everything when it comes to the finances as positive, that money flows to me. And there's so many money mantras out there that you can work through and think about at night. And as soon as you feel like you're getting distracted, go on and take snapshots on your phone and keep what I do is I actually keep a page where I can go in and I can read these things so that if I realize I'm distracted, I can bring myself back to center and say, hey, these are what my focus, these are my goals, these are my mantras, and this is how I'm going to stay focused on not overspending, building the savings, reaching my financial goals. And it's much easier said than done. And obviously for somebody like me who does this day in and day out for as many years as I've done this now, it's second nature and I can really do it in my sleep. But you have to train yourself. And again, since finances and bills are part of the rest of your life, it's a good time to start at any point in time. And if you screw it up, you just start again. It's no big deal. And try not to be hard on yourself about it because, you can't get through your entire adult life without making some sort of financial mistake or misstep. It's a question of what you do with that. And instead of beating yourself up, take a look and say, what have I learned from the experience that I had? Maybe it wasn't as positive as I would have liked it to have been, but because it was negative, I was able to extract this from it. And this is where it takes me the next time. So much awareness in finances is really important and it's doable.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to have you here, Leslie. I'm grateful for all the years you've been a part of our credit chat. We always love to have you back here. You're so knowledgeable. This was a really inspiring conversation around having that positive mindset about your finances. And I also love what you just said. Debt and your financial health is a lifelong journey. You may think you have it under control one day, but things could change any minute. So making sure that you're continuing to navigate it while staying positive about your finances is so important. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you share with our listeners where they can learn more about you?
Sure. So many places online. You can certainly put my name in a search engine and I'll come up. But I'm on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and Instagram, TikTok, all the social media. And it's Leslie H. Tayne, ESQ, at TayneLaw.com. And the book is Life and Debt.
Wonderful. And I will be sure to include those links when we share this podcast out. I'm so grateful for your time, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.